Good morning and welcome to Higher PE Week 2. Last week you learned about the emotional and mental factors and how they impacted on performance. This week we shall learn about the social and the physical factors. Whether you're playing in a team or an individual sport, there will be interaction with players, coaches, spectators, etc. And to be able to play or perform at your best, the social interaction that you have with them should be positive. The sub-factors that we are going to look at are team dynamics, roles and responsibilities, and communication. The first sub-factor that we will look at is team dynamics. I'd like you now to take a second to pause the presentation and read through the information. I'm sure you can think of examples where you have worked together to create opportunities to score, or perhaps encouraged each other when something has not quite been going the way you hoped it would. Our second sub-factor is defining roles and responsibilities. So first of all, we need to understand what a role could be. So take a second to pause the presentation again and read this page and have a think about roles that you might have played in PE or in your own activity. You are now going to complete task number 1. You will click on the Google form and the link is on the bottom of the page or on the Google Classroom post. The first 3 questions each are linked to video clips below and on the form. You are required to answer the questions identifying the sub-factors or the roles that you might see in the clips. So please pause the presentation now and begin answering the questions. Hopefully you've managed to complete these questions and we shall move on to our third sub-factor, which is communication. Communication can be verbal or non-verbal, and so I'd like you to now pause the presentation and read the information. The most common form of communication is verbal, but there are many hidden ways we communicate with each other, from a gesture to a facial expression, to increase the understanding of what we're trying to say. We're going to move on to the second task in a second, but before we do, we need to recap what you were learning last week about how to answer an explain question in Higher PE. The explain is one of our command words, and there's a 3-step process to be followed. First of all, you should provide a specific example of a situation where the social factor may be used. Secondly, you then explain how this factor could impact on you or your group at the current time. And finally, you should say what the possible outcome could be of this factor in the future to help or hinder performance. So let us look at an example. In this volleyball example, the question asks to explain how verbal communication might be useful. So first of all, communication could help you when the ball is about to land between you and your teammate in volleyball. So you've identified the factor in communication and given the situation. This means that you shout your name loudly to alert your teammate that you will take the shot on. So you've now explained how that would help in this situation. And finally, this leads to clarity and your teammate moving out of the way for you to have time and space to execute an accurate dig. So this then leads to an action in the future which will have a positive outcome on the performance. You're now going to complete task 2 on the Google form. There are 2 questions. The first question will ask you to watch a clip and then answer some questions on verbal and non-verbal communication. And the final question on the next slide will ask you to write an answer using the 3-step process to explain the impact of the social factor. This can be any social factors from any activity that you feel you can write appropriately about. So please pause the presentation now and complete the answers. That brings us to the end of the lesson on the social factor, and I hope that you feel confident in the identification and explanation of these. Remember to submit your answers and complete the physical lesson if you have not already done so. Have a good week and stay safe.